Hello.
Oh, Joe's going to kick it off. Rock and roll, man. Do it. This is my first sip this morning.
Okay, let's enjoy this first sip.
Yeah, that actually was literally my first sip of coffee I've had this morning. I roll out of bed, I turn on the studio, and boom, here I am. How are you, man?
I'm good. And what a studio it looks like, huh? You had a big week here, Adam. Look at this.
I did, but I did this little exercise the other night too on the live show. This is the difference a camera makes, guys. If I'm a big believer that just work with the resources you got, but if you could get a camera versus like a desk cam, let me see here for a second. Let me go to my settings. Because you're going to see this is nothing but just a corner of an absolute disaster in my basement. Here's the see, there's just there's tubs there behind me.
That's absolute that's absolute garbage. Yeah, look at that.
Well, I'm just saying that, okay, all right, fine. The camera helps. How about that? That's what I'm saying.
It does. You know what I did? Instead of head on, where you see a lot of crap over here, I just turned it just a little bit. So
yeah, that was my main point. Yeah, and I anyway, we won't show off each other's disaster. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for hanging out. You're crazy to be up this early, and at the very start of the chat, the three people that were in the chat, none of them were on the East Coast. It's even earlier there where they're at. Anyway, I want to say thanks to everybody for being here. You can read who's here. We don't have to do the whole roll call thing, right? I appreciate it. I'm happy, but if you want, go.
Who's cleaning rat?
What is that? Oh, Holly. Yeah, I mentioned to Holly. I was like, "Come on, it's central 6:30 Central Time," and she's like, "I've been up since 4 a.m. cleaning rat tubs." And I joked like our tagline this morning is "When a dream becomes a nightmare," and I'm like, "There you go. That's how." But let's.
I always thought that someday I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to clean rat tubs.
I didn't. I still don't want to. I don't own rats. I don't. That's a whole show topic of its own. Of is there an economy or a way to succeed without doing your own rats? And I've tried for a long time and I've made it, but it does make it tough because you gotta buy them. I mean, it's another economic factor that goes into it.
Well, there is an analogy here when we talk about like what you want to have in life, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes comes with some rat shit that you got to deal with, we don't swear on this show, right? Sorry.
What's the I think that there's probably less like families like, hey, let's all crowd around. So we're probably okay. And actually, one of my favorite like jokes about PG-13 is that you get a S, you get a F, you get a cigarette and a martini, and that's it. You get one of each.
That's it. Oh,
and that's how you keep it. That's how you keep it PG-13. So I'm not suggesting that we probably have 3 out of the 4 of those on a morning show, but that's what
every pursuit, you have to deal with certain things that you don't want to deal with, Is there ever any pursuit that's just all to extend the analogy, that's just all snakes and no rats and rat cleaning? And that snake poop. Oh my gosh.
You saw it one time. Yeah. Yes. It was like a fat dachshund had just pooed
Oh my gosh. I remember, there's certain smells that you remember.
Right.
And maybe my mind doesn't work in the way other people's minds work, but I don't really remember smells until I smell them, and it brings me back to a certain
takes you right there,
moment, right? But that I can conjure, that smell I could conjure in my head.
Well, you know what's funny is that you get a multitude of bad smells sometimes. There's healthy poo that all the snake owners are kind of used to smelling. We know that one. That's the one you smelled.
Yeah.
There is times when they'll have a stomach issue or catch an infection, or, just like humans, you eat something that doesn't quite agree with you, and you smell that in the room, and you're like, uh-oh, who do I got to go tend to? And usually those are a little runnier, so they're even more cleanup. So you got to get that one. And then there's the death smell where you're like, uh-oh. And that's not usually from a snake dying. That's usually from, they will have like attacked the rat or the rodent and not eaten it. Or sometimes they do something called regurgitate. They're instinctually, they want to eat it. And then they're like, no, actually I didn't want that. So it will have gone down, had a little dip in stomach acid, and then come back up with saliva and whatnot too. And then you got to go, you're like, oh, that's the death smell. I got to go find the rat and fish that out of which tub that is.
See,
so
for the normal, I mean, I don't want to call myself normal anymore. I mean,
this sounds psychotic is what you're going to say, right? For the normal person, this is insane, right?
I'm just saying there's really, like, how I've been introduced, there's really, really neat things about this, reptiles, ball pythons is really, this because I know you, the community is fantastic. That convention in Daytona, they're beautiful creatures. And then you hear this and you go, how, why?
You're right back to the start of the snake stereotype.
There's something yes, that's right. That's something that puts you back to zero, and you're kind of like, whoa, man, you guys deal with a lot.
Yeah. All right.
But you get used to it, I guess, right?
No, you do. And it goes back to everything you're talking about. Like, even 5-star Michelin restaurants have dirty plates. You still got to clean somebody else's, leftover fat gristle that they didn't want to eat and left on the plate for you, know? Yeah, like it's all there. But yeah, it's a little bit crazy. A couple of housekeeping things really quick. So on the Tuesday night show, I was rewatching it because sometimes I do that and try and learn and improve and all that. I misspoke. I said I've been in restaurants for 16 years. I was talking about coping with crazy lifestyles and how we get through stuff. That number is 26. I had to do, I was like, am I old? Well, yeah. 16 to 42 is 26. So how
was that realization for you, Adam? Was that feel good?
The studio does a nice job of hiding a lot of the grays, but man, this is moving and this is getting lighter. And that's what I do like cat, and I like cats, and maybe I will. I feel like the camera angle. Anyway, the other bit of housekeeping on our collaboration video last week, we've got a whole lot of great feedback in the comments from like people. I got to say thank you to the audience. Like, this show has taken roots and it's gotten its own identity, totally separate from the Tuesday night show, which is really cool. It's like, well, I have two shows. It was not going to have a different identity, right? So that's cool. So I'm real thankful for that. But a few people brought up a really good, point of, this collaboration idea is great on paper, and that's a really pragmatic way to go about things. But what happens, and we all see it, what happens when life gets real and two people can't get along, and then you've relied on somebody else, you've invested your business with somebody else, and so I get the pendulum swing of where the comfort is. And I don't want to redo last week's show, but I guess my only thought on that would be you can you can partner on aspects rather than sort of the marriage model where everything's a partner. So maybe you partner on a breeding program with a snake or two. Maybe you partner on a rat breeding program, or you're able to invest with somebody else, and then they could provide rats to you at little or no cost after that initial investment, because you were able to get them over the hump of what they needed or whatever it might be. So that was kind of my thought. You can hedge your bets on the collaborations and sort of see how they go and learn from them. But that was the housekeeping of looking back. But I thought it was great to have that interaction, and it struck me. I was like, we didn't talk about it. So it's
cool. Funny that you bring up marriage, right? Because that's like a predetermined, like how you define success in marriage is like a
real quick, Joe.
There's
the comments that I go for. This is not the aged man look. This is the nice look that the lady with the great style, maybe the most style in the whole room. That's Nicole. Nicole deals in big snakes, like retics, they call it. Like, you think my snakes are big and my snake poo is like, she probably has like Doberman sized snake poo from those snakes that she has. It's unreal how big her snakes are.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
Oh yeah. So I was saying when you have a predetermined or like a culturally defined relationship like marriage, the success for marriage is you die being with that person, or they pass away, like till death do you part, right? So
but there's a journey on the way. I don't think that we're just like in it to be like, come on, baby, let's die. Like, that's not. But that's a little different perspective.
Okay, but if you break it down, you go. People say if you break up before you die, they call that a failed marriage, right?
Okay. All right. I get your point. Sure.
Okay. All right. So, but with other relationships, like a partnership, you have to define success at the very start. And I think in certain, I mean, there was just like some study that was like, I think even with marriage, or relationships in life, you define success. You have the ability to define what success looks like. Maybe it's not being together for the entirety of your career in snakes. It's like you said, it's like, okay, well, what exactly does success look like in this partnership? And if we go our separate ways in 3 years, that's okay. That's all right. We use each other. We use each other to help each other out at that moment in our lives. And I'm saying that as not only thinking about business relationships, but also personal relationships too.
Yeah, and that is how most relationships go. And we could talk for hours on goals of of marriage. That marriage is its own one thing. That's why it has its own word. Like every other thing falls under like relationship, friends, interaction. Marriage has its own like bucket. So, and I think I commented somewhere on, I got too many shows and too much content, but I commented somewhere like, we didn't get manuals on marriage, and the manuals that they write suck anyway, because they're not going to apply to every person, every situation, right? So like,
or every time in history,
that's right. Or every day is different in marriage. So, but if we set that one aside, yeah, you're right. Like, not everything and most things. I had I complained to a boss one time. I don't know if I want to hire this guy. I asked him about his 5-year plan, and I was going to hire him for management. And he was like, well, yeah, I want to be running my own restaurant and probably have a house, in a different state. And I'm like, well, thanks for the honesty, but that's a dumb answer when I'm asking you about leadership. And my boss was like, he was honest. He's committing at least 3 good years to you. And he goes, look around. What manager has stayed with you for 3 years? If you get 3 years, it's a home run, Adam. And I did hire the guy. So yeah, sometimes you got to look at it a little bit different. And I think, again, setting marriage aside, I think society has, I don't remember when I was growing up, it being such a common sort of understanding that you could step in and out of a relationship, which is the reality. Like people date, play the field, all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
it's like more healthily, is that a word? It's more, it's acknowledged in a healthy way in society now that as long as you're upfront with each other and that's what both people are into, then there's this whole spectrum of relationships rather than this like, hey, do you want to go steady and put on a poodle dress and we'll go to the dance and, you know,
right.
make out under the bleachers or whatever. I don't know.
I started to say this, but like, yeah, I think society is, and I think definitely a younger generation of people who are coming up trying to figure out, you know, what kind of relationships they want in their life. I think there was this recent study that was like 50% of Generation Z thinks that open marriages are acceptable. Like, and that's redefining certain aspects of what has been culturally acceptable for marriage for a long time. So yeah, it's but that when you enter into, so when somebody thinks that enters into a marriage, they're going, okay, well, let's define success. It's not necessarily being having you as my you know, my I don't know. I said the S word already. Can I say sexual?
Yeah.
Having you
as
my sexual partner,
situation.
I'm gonna, you know, we can be open with other people. I mean, that's just redefining success and what a marriage looks like or what a relationship looks like. So to get back to snakes, what kind of relationships do snakes have with each other?
It's very pragmatic. It's very quick and efficient. And then they go back to being left alone, man. They want their warm spot. They want their own food. They don't want to worry about who's going to eat their food, who's going to have their warm and cool spot. And that's about it.
Any lessons we can take from the relationships in both business and personal lives?
I don't think so, but I will say, and this is, we probably don't have to psychoanalyze this, and I'm not even going to say who it is. There is somebody in my life. I truly believe they're perfectly happy all alone. They have no interest in, and it's they're not like unhealthy hermit or unhealthy addict. They live life on their own terms. They live on their own schedule. And they interact as they wish. But as far as living and having to consider and deal with other people's quirks and what that person would say, their irrational decisions, I mean, it's almost the Sheldon Cooper model. Like, no, it's like, I'm good. Don't want to be alone. That's where the happiness is. And
yeah.
So there are people that way, and they're few and far between because generally that loneliness or solitude masks a loneliness. But I've had to just acknowledge that is a happy, healthy person in that situation. So there is that sort of relationship as well. I mean, or outlook
you can look at all the things that we've talked about, and there's a commonality of, you know, what is societally acceptable and what is not, or what is our culture pushing people into in everything that we talked about. So marriages, being alone, I think some people just love to be alone and they need to be alone, and that's fine. But you know, that's another thing that I think, you know, when I was coming up, it was like, oh, somebody is alone in their 40s or whatever.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey, you know, what's wrong with them?
Yeah. What's wrong with this
people
person?
Felt like there was something wrong with them. And that's not how it is. That's not, I mean, some people just like that. And some people are better off that way. So, and also with snakes, I mean, you could see the same thing that we're saying about this. Like, is it culturally acceptable to be alone? I mean, that's the whole premise of this show, is like, you know, somebody who doesn't have snakes trying to understand somebody who does have snakes.
Right. That's true.
And like talking about that and going, oh, that's okay. That's not weird. That's something that they like to do. That's just different from me. It's just funny. It's funny. I think there's a overarching theme to all the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we're sort of on a parallel track right now that we haven't totally tied together, but the tie is coming up and it's really close there. Troy brought up a statement that, and I didn't know the show would take this turn, so I haven't show prepped any of this topic. I saw a quote one time that really struck me, and it was attributed to Robin Williams, but I never know who said what on the internet anymore. You know, you put a black and white picture of somebody with a little bit of a fuzzy edge, and then you write a quote, and it, you know, who knows. But it said, my greatest fear is not being lonely. It's being surrounded by people that make me feel lonely. Mm-hmm. And that's true. And that is the dream becoming a nightmare. That is what happens. So let's switch over to that, because we kind of went down the relationship path, which came from collaboration last week. You started by saying anything that we pursue any snake endeavor is going to have snake poop with it. I have to agree. I mean, very few of us will ever live a life where money can cure everything. And I will tell you, I've not lived that life. I've worked in that world with people that have the money to cure anything with money. And there is a lack of happiness in that world, in that community, because there's nothing that they strive for. There's nothing that they pursue, and everything that they look forward to is instant. And therefore you don't have the time to have gratitude, to have sort of a longing for, or what was the Seinfeld joke? Do you ever yearn? A yearning for what's coming up. Like, I enjoy vacations a ton, but the anticipation of a vacation is phenomenal. Waiting for these snake eggs right in here that I know they're in there. She hasn't laid. She's 10 days overdue. Give me the eggs. Like, the anticipation is fun. So I don't believe that anything comes. I don't believe there's any snakes without poo, to keep up our analogy. With that being said, and if there's a pendulum or a spectrum there, how do you balance rough days, overwhelming days? How do you know? Is that Augie?
No, that's not on my end.
Oh, maybe I got dogs upstairs. I mean, I do have dogs, but I didn't think they were.
Doesn't sound like any of your dogs, though.
They don't bark. I don't know. I mean, we're in a new place, new squirrels, new chipmunks. We have shrews and voles. I didn't have vole. I didn't even know the difference between a shrew and a vole. How do we know? Because we don't just quit. We're not just quitters. And then we don't want to be self-torturing martyrs. Nothing worse than that, right? Oh, life's horrible. I do it all. We're all tired of hearing that story. How do you know in there? When is it actually a nightmare, and when is it just a blip on the radar? And I know there's no simple answer, but what's your insight, Joe, when you hear that stuff?
I'm still. Oh boy! So there was a lot of dead air just then. But
that means thought and care is going into what's coming out here.
I think I think one of the things that I feel in my own life is I have I don't know if I've mentioned this, but there's a certain restlessness that I have that I can't tamp down. I can't stop. And there's and so whatever you're dealing with in your life, right? Like whether it's that kind of like that restless energy of trying to get to the next thing or do the next thing or try the next thing, or if it's, I have this goal that I'm trying to get to and I'm not quite getting there. There's something about getting to a point where I had to get to a point where I embrace that part of it, and look at that part of it in a different way. So instead of like I could look at that part of myself and go, oh, I'm just not content with stuff. I'm just not, or I'm not where I really want to be. Or I could look at it and say, and identify it as restless energy. And that makes me okay with embracing that part of it. So if you take that mentality and you go, well, I'm cleaning up rat poop, or I'm cleaning up snake poop, yeah, I think you're going to get to a point where you go, oh, this is a nightmare. Or you could go, I'm making things nice for these creatures that
right.
So I know that's kind of kind of an age-old cliched thing. It's kind of how you think about it. Now, the other thing though that I think I need to observe, and everybody needs to observe, is if you value people in your life and you love them, and you want to spend your life with them, you have to gauge that and go, well, how are my pursuits affecting the people around me? So there's like this thing where you go, okay, well, I can look at this differently, and I can look at this differently so much that it becomes something that I can embrace and enjoy doing. Or it doesn't become a nightmare. It's just something that you need to do in order to have your dream fulfilled, right? But also, if you change your way of thinking so much that you're starting to hurt the people around you, that's when you go, okay, all right, maybe I'm doing this too much. Maybe I'm thinking about this too much. Maybe I'm reframing this too much that the people around me are, that are being hurt.
Yeah, and we're fed a lot of cliche. Like, one of the cliches in the industry is you only lose if you quit. Okay, that's a cool pep talk, but how broke you're gonna go? How desolate you're gonna get? How how, like, that's almost a hoarder mentality. Like we see these shows on TV which, by the way, I don't know anything about the psychological, technical. I'm using stereotypes is what I'm saying, and my apologies to anybody if I'm touching on sore subjects, speaking as a layman here. It takes snakes out of it. I can imagine a hoarder going, no, this is all worth a ton of money. It's huge. It's huge. I got this one in Cancun, and I got this one in Orlando, and I got this one in New York City, and this was in 1978, and they're never going to make that one again. So I got to have that one, and then this one's missing this piece, and I'm going to go get that, and then I'm going to sell it all and make a bunch of money. And I just made this up, but does that not? I mean, Joe, you might not know, but audience, does that not sound like what we do? Well, I got this het clown, and I got this double het ultramel clown, and then I got this ultramel over here, and in 5 years I could breed this to this, and then that snake's gonna be worth a lot of money. 6 years later, a $3,000 snake doesn't do you any good, and that's if the market holds and it truly turns into that. So I know I'm making the pitch against everything I'm doing, which is not my point. That's not what I want to do. But where does the scale tip? Where's the seesaw of healthy and unhealthy? And we've been talking about in the audience, Sarah said it's all a matter of perspective. Perspective, psychological mindset, pep talks, all that's in one area. What happens when reality strikes? You flood your basement because your rat operation had a difficulty, and now you had your rats on the second floor, and you've got a 10 gallons of water that has flowed through your floor. Your hobby that costs $200 to $300 a month, that's getting out of hand. I mean, it's become an addictive thing. and you're not flying solo. You have other people in your life, and it's starting to become, we could do stuff with that other $300. I know you're dreaming about 5 years. You're dreaming about that missing component.
Yeah.
I'm not framing anybody a hoarder. I'm not saying if you're facing this that you're mentally unhealthy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm using it as an example of how something could turn from a dream to a nightmare. And Joe, you might, this is an actual quote of like I think he's a Scandinavian philosopher. I don't know his name. He essentially says, our biggest fears are dragons that guard the cave of the things we hold most dear. And what it means is the things that scare us the most are the things that we care the most about. If we didn't care about it, it wouldn't be scary. If I wasn't so terrified of something happening to my son, that means that he's the thing I cherish the most in the world, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this passion, this drive that's the treasure in the cave, and the fear or this nightmare is the dragon guarding that cave. And so what I'm saying is we love these things so much, so it's hard to see with clarity. It's hard to walk away. You can't just be the stoic, And I bring all this up because I hear this. I hear this chatter in the industry. I hear this. There's this cycle. You hear on the one hand, we're killing it. Proper Royals. I got this brand. We got 2 shows. I got sponsorships. I'm working shows on the weekends. That's cool. That's the outward thing. Look, most people don't have time to do that. Most people have a job. Most people haven't carved out there. I'm at this really specific niche in my life and my career where I can work at home. I have that extra 5-6 hours a day to really dedicate to what I'm doing, but that's every day. And there is days that it's a wait. Like this Sunday, I'm going to drive 10 hours. I'm going to drive 5 hours. I'm going to vend for 6 hours. I'm going to drive 5 hours home. I talk about it, but that's not that's not the showpiece. It's not the, hey, look how much I suffered. I don't know how much I'll make. Will I make $70 or will I make $2,000? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a thin razor's edge kind of line. And I see it out there. So I mostly just want to tell everybody that it's okay to think that. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to use whatever resources are around you, and it weighs on me. I've heard it a lot this week. I've heard it I talked about it on my show the other night, like 4 different situations of people going through rough times with it. And it's got to stay healthy, or else then the animals suffer too. Like if your head's not in it, like eventually the animals are going to suffer if it's become a total burden. Is that ethically even good,
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it's hard for me to tell because to talk about this because I'm so restless that I've never had like this one thing that I wanted to do. So I don't really know what that one thing is. From the outside, I look, maybe I don't look like this, but in my professional life, I look, pretty put together and I know what I'm doing. But really, I don't really feel that way. I go and I go, well, what do I really want to do? What do I really want to do? And that in and of itself, that could be a nightmare. That's my nightmare, is that I want at some point to be content with what I'm doing. I want to stop that train of just that endless, what do I need? What do I want to do next? What do I want to do next? So it's hard for me to, like, I don't have a thing like reptiles or ball pythons where I go, I'm going to pursue this and pursue this and pursue this. But I can identify that, the pursuit of something has really put me into some dark places where I had to go, okay, so what is this about me? Why do I feel this way? Why do I pursue something so much that I'm feeling down that I don't have it, and that's that's an okay. It took me a long time to go, well, okay, that's a good part of you. Like that's okay to feel that way. It's okay to be that way. And it's just part of who you are. It would be wonderful if you could stop feeling that way. And I tried to do that. I tried to ignore that. And I just couldn't. I couldn't. It's just a part of me. So that's also a thing. Like if you're pursuing a dream and it's becoming a nightmare because it's affecting the people around you, or you're losing a whole lot of money, or you're cleaning up too much snake poop. If you're getting to the point where that's, it's like it's hurting you, but if you were to put it aside, like you'd really miss it, and it would like not be a part, like you wouldn't feel yourself if you didn't do that kind of thing. I can't imagine, somebody feeling like I need to clean up rat poop all the time, or snake poop. But if that's a part of you, like it's simple for somebody to look in and go, well, you got to step away when that thing is a part of you.
Right. Yeah. And it becomes part of our self-definition too. And I think so.
Yeah. Especially because you're stepping outside of what's in the mainstream, right? Once you step outside of the mainstream, that becomes more a part of your identity than anything else. Right.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I think everybody in the audience has seen it. I hope it's not part of like my brand's culture, but we've also seen, oh, somebody's out. I knew they wouldn't make it. I see people come and go all the time. They're going to fail. Like that's some of the narratives. So you don't want that attached to you. So we talked about like the idea of a dream and a nightmare. We talked about some specifics. Most of what we've been talking about has been in binary terms. Does a marriage win, or is it a fail, or do you die? Which was kind of dark. Are you living a dream, or are you living a nightmare? What about a solution-oriented happy place? And
right.
Like, so Joe, I know some of these specifics will be a little bit foreign for you, but there's probably analogies we can find. There is such a thing as, and even from a business standpoint, this is something a business would go through. There is an idea of streamlining, refocusing. I think every one of us in the audience would say, if we had it to do all over again, are there snakes we wouldn't have bought? Are there projects we wouldn't have taken on? Because most of us go, yeah, that was cool, and I bought it and I got it now. I guess I'll work with it. But when you have 10, 15, 30 of those, suddenly that's a really big burden. Troy made a good point. Everything's relative. So yeah, Troy, I know it's more than $200 to $300 per month for you, but you also have income. So that's a business. When it's a straight hobby, as a hobbyist that owns 10, 15, 20 snakes, probably a few hundred a month, So from a total business strategy standpoint, if I were to go into a restaurant and they were losing money, I would say, first, let's look at your menu. Are you offering too many things? So from a menu standpoint, to sell one tomato from a wholesale standpoint, you got to buy 20 pounds of tomatoes. So your very first burger, we always joke, the first burger costs you thousands of dollars to make, because you got to buy a case of beef, you got to buy 200 buns, you got to buy 20 pounds of tomatoes, you got to buy 25 pounds of lettuce. And if you do that for 50 menu items, they overlap. It's not thousands for every menu item, but every new ingredient you have to buy a wholesale big case of. So you streamline what you do. And I tell people, hey, what if you embrace the idea of do what you do really well and only do that? And I literally, my last property that I opened, the chefs were saying, hey, we can't open on this day. I get goosebumps talking about it. I love this stuff. We can't open on this day. We don't have a trained staff. Our equipment isn't exactly right. And I said, guys, I hate to tell you, and I hate to be disrespectful, we have to open this day. Our investors, our owners, our members, us, they've paid us a lot of money and they gave me a lot of leeway. I said I wasn't taking this job unless I brought you guys with me. I laid down the gauntlet. I could do this job if I get my chefs. I went Deion Sanders. Everybody else out of the building, I'm bringing my people in, and this is what's going to happen. I said, guys, we have to open on that day. And they all looked at me like they were going to murder me. 3 chefs that I brought from the PGA Tour. I hijacked them. I said, guys, we're going to go live our dream. Come to the mountains with me. And then I said, guys, I literally don't care if we open with 1 burger on the menu, as long as it's the baddest ass burger that's ever been made. And we could tell people the story of why they're going to come here for 1 amazing burger. And then they looked at me like I was crazy because no chef wants to open with 1 menu item. And they're like, well, we could do burgers. We could do a flatbread. I got this roast we could do. That'll fit. And it suddenly went from this overwhelming nightmare of 50 things to, hey, what if I really streamlined what I love, what I just absolutely adore? And I had permission to get rid of all the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if that works in snakes. I don't know if that works for people's mind going through tough stuff, but from a business standpoint, it meant that we were putting our very, very best into the thing that would reach the most people. What's more American than a burger? Like, it's delicious. Everybody loves it. It's an amazing recipe. And I have a whole philosophy on burgers I'm not going to dive into. So we didn't open with 1 item. We opened with 4 or 5 items, and it went great. And that allowed us, from a business standpoint, to impress our customers and our owners, bring cash flow in, make the team feel like they had succeeded rather than feel like they were getting punched in the face. It became a healthy place to work, which attracts people to come want to work there. And blah, blah, blah. I still get to consult for this company because that was a successful thing. But we could do that. I think that's like the happy medium of what we might see in snakes, except unless it is an addiction, a mental health crisis, that's a different story. If it's just, how do I get back to my passion? How do I make this less overwhelming? You don't have to fail. You don't have to quit. Streamline, sell all that extra stuff that we have. I could show you the picture all around me, and just simplify. Simplify to what you love doing,
It's I'm trying to remember. It's something called the Hedgehog concept that
I'm interested.
So I'm trying to remember the analogy, but it's from Jim Collins' Good to Great is a book that's been around for a long time. And the Hedgehog concept is the hedgehog has one strategy to survive a conflict, and that's to roll up in a ball. So all of the all of the things that try to attack it, I think the analogy that they use is like a fox is like they're sly, and there's this idea that a fox is like has these different things that the fox is trying to do, but the hedgehog has perfected one thing, and that's to roll up in a ball, and he does that really well, and that's what makes the hedgehog survive.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I should have said earlier, first off, thanks for being pretty vulnerable and like really transparent about what you deal with, Joe. Yeah. I empathize with that. I think we've had even conversations on your, which I cherish, the conversations on your porch, deep into wine and who knows what else, and good dinner and all that. People say I do a lot, and I've been a self-admitted sort of workaholic, and that's how I cope when I have that anxious feeling of I got to produce, I got to have something at the end of the day. It's not exactly what you're talking about, but it is this drive of like, I want to pursue this. I have this opportunity. I got one life on this earth. I'll rest. I will, to get really deep on some psychoanalysis, my mother, she died from cancer at 59. that's 16 years away from the age that I am right now. I don't think I'm going to die when I'm 59. That's not how I'm going through life. On the other hand, I do know life is precious and it's short, and I have dreams that I want to chase. So if I push myself and, I work hard, I've made good money, and if I want to go on tour and chase a dream, I'm going to go chase that dream. If I want to raise ball pythons, I'm going to do that. But that could get out of hand too. I mean, the touring loses money, your lack of sleep, the lifestyle, being away from the family. It has its own version of snake poop,
Yeah.
And I lost my train of thought a little bit of where I tie that back. But I guess the running analogy would also be, I keep that streamlined. I always only tour with 1 or 2 people. We can find places to stay that are efficient. We can actually travel in one vehicle. Go ahead.
I think that would be something that I would identify as a difference between you and me, is that when you have a pursuit, it's very focused. It's very streamlined. You go, this is what I want to do. I'm going to get really good at this. For my personality, and I think a lot of people are this way, but we're pushed to be a certain way. I'm less focused. I'm less streamlined. And that causes problems, I think, with the way that I feel about myself. I'm more like, it's that old saying of a jack of all trades, a master of none. That's exactly how I feel about myself. Is that I want to dip my toe in here. I want to dip my toe in here. I want to dip my hand in here. Other extremities in other places. Like that's what I deal with. That's the problem. But when you have something, and that can be a nightmare of itself, but when you have something, it's so focused and streamlined, and sometimes, and that can become its own nightmare in of itself. But I think in having conversations like this, like somebody who's different from me can rub off on me and go, okay, I need to settle down and go, okay, how do I focus like Adam focuses?
I don't think anybody else has ever described me as settled and focused. I get corporate review.
I mean, we're talking relative here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I remember one of the most stinging corporate reviews I ever got, and why it stung was I didn't get it behind me. I was subjected to consultants coming in. Oh, we're going to fix this property. We're going to interview Adam, and then these jerks, their consulting plan was to come in and have a hostile takeover. They ultimately pitched to the board, we could buy your company and run this, and you wouldn't have to deal with it anymore, and all your members would take a payout. They knew one of my former bosses, and they called my former boss about me, and my former boss said, Adam works hard, he loves excellence, but he's always thinking about the next thing. He can't stay focused on what is right in front of us. And so I was hurt, and it pissed me off, and these people used this against me. And then I thought about it, and I went, what are you talking about? Ooh, just want to open with a burger and 3 items? Of course I'm looking on to the next thing. Do you just want to be stagnant? Right. Do you just want to provide your customers this flat line? We've always heard a flat line doesn't exist. You're either going this way or you're going that way. It might be slow. It might be drawn out. Yeah. Of course I'm always looking for the next best thing. Yeah. And I said to my current owner that received that or my current boss that had received that feedback from those consultants, if you expect me just to be the settled, content, I'm going to do this same job with the same title, with the same pay for the next 15 years, I'm not your guy. I got, even at that time, I was in my late 30s. I had nearly 30 years of work life ahead of me. You think I'm just going to do this for the next 30? If that's what you think, cut me loose now. And he looked at me and he goes, Adam, it's all right, man. That's not what I expect of you. I said, okay, cool. He goes, don't worry about those consultants. So we told them to hit the road. But I've had that feedback that was like, well, I'm going to embrace it. That's my strength, not my weakness.
Yeah. I think when we, there's been some really good chatter with the chat. The people you surround yourself with can be life or death of your business. Good people will keep you positive and going. I think after being in my career for 9 years, I needed something new. I want to go to shows and make friends because I miss being around people.
Yeah.
I think it's this. Actually, when I look at the chat, it's usually the chat is like these short little comments. I think this is it's touching on something that's affecting people's motivations to continue doing what they'd love to do, which is take care of reptiles, ball pythons, to continue pursuing this. And isn't that kind of, I mean, isn't that kind of what we're all pursuing, is that one thing that's driving you to keep moving forward, keep moving forward? I don't know. Maybe it isn't.
Yeah. I think in any pursuit, sorry, let me go back to this show. I think the value of this episode, if not this show concept, is that when you hear other people express what you might be feeling, it gives you a chance to step back and think about it. It's very difficult to think about yourself in an unbiased, objective way, right?
Mhm.
I don't mean you personally, any of us. We all have our own visions of ourselves, and then there's a reality of who we are and what the situation is that we're in. But when you can separate yourself, Allah, I don't think I've ever said Allah. When you can separate yourself, and you might, through the lens of Adam and Joe talking about things, you might be able to go, oh, there's just other humans dealing with, with. It's not so personal. It's not so subjective. It's easier to be objective when you hear somebody else versus looking yourself in the mirror sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And none of this is probably as heavy or as drastic as I'm talking about, but we also don't want it to get there either. And if we zoom way out in Joe's world of, hey, you succeed when you die, we're specks on another speck of dirt flying around a bigger speck of dirt in a big tornado of specks of dirt that we don't fully understand, even the tornado, much less what's outside of it. So what I'm really saying is take it easy on yourselves, guys. You're doing all right. You're going to be okay. And if you thrive in ball pythons, it's going to be great. And if you don't, there's life out there, man. There's other stuff.
There's something that compounds, though, the worry here, I think, in a community such as this, or another community that is outside of the mainstream, that is acceptable, is if you pursue this and it doesn't work and you step away from it, it kind of backs up that idea that you pursued something that was outside of the mainstream and you shouldn't have. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Stepping outside of what is socially acceptable to pursue this weird thing that you love, and then that thing doesn't work. It's like, and you're feeling while you're pursuing this that you're feeling like this is a strange thing, and other people think it's strange, but this is what I love, and I'm going to pursue it. And if I fail, it's going to back up or support their idea that it was a bad thing. I think I only say that because I think that there's an added pressure there when you're pursuing something like this, and that pressure is just made up. It's just made up because it doesn't exist. I don't know, or it doesn't exist for the people that really matter to you.
Right. And Danny says Adam has no clue what Joe is saying. I always think in these analogies, which is dangerous because you could get lost in them and they're imperfect and all of that. So I was trying to think of what would fit or what something I identified with that way. And what I was really trying to tie together, and you're right, the idea being it's a self-created, self-initiated expectation. In one way, you're right, it doesn't matter, but if it succeeds, it matters greatly. So on the journey to it mattering, or the journey to it can matter. I'm not sure how this is going to tie together, but the idea that came to me was, when we chase something for philosophical or personal belief, or something starts pragmatic and then becomes this personal like cause. And when I think about that, I think about punk rock music. And let me tell you, there's very little money and very little success to be made in punk rock venues and punk rock music. And I love it. And it's for the cause and it's great. At the end of the day, I was still putting on a suit and a bow tie and selling very high-end wine to very rich people that was a really just sort of two different clashing worlds, no pun intended about the clash in my mind. But something else comes to mind. And again, I'm not 100% sure how it ties back, but again, on the philosophy or things that matter or don't, there's a band that I think most of us are familiar with, but they're called Green Day. And they were big on the punk and kind of underground scene in Berkeley, California in the 90s. And there's a really pretty famous, so famous, I can't remember the name of it, but there's a bar or a punk rock venue that was very supportive. There's pictures of Rancid or the guys from Rancid and Green Day when they were Operation Ivy and that stuff at the time in the mid 90s. And then Green Day had a smash hit with their aptly snake poop titled album, Dookie. Look at that. How could I have known that was going to come and land in our lap today? And the bar said, you can't play here if you have a major record label. And like the bar was just making up these rules that didn't exist. This whole support scene for this culture that was supposed to help and bring people up just ousted the people. And I got to say, Green Day are better guys than I am. All through their success, they were funding this bar. They would do charity events. They'd write huge checks for this bar. And the bar never let them play there until about 8 years ago. They filmed a documentary when basically Green Day bailed them out again. And they kept the doors open and they finally played there. And I don't know how that plays out in our big analogy.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like these made up rules because and you're feeling kind of like that's what I latch on to the story is there's these made up rules that you're feeling out of place in the world that you existed and kind of made, right? So you're feeling out of place and that's a certain amount of pressure, but also you're when you succeed, it, like you're saying, it makes a huge difference. And it made a huge difference to that bar. I mean, I'm dancing around this thing and I think and this will be our final comment. I'll say this, but then Adam, I'm dancing around this thing that I had in my life, which was a relationship outside of the mainstream. And it was something that, was, that I had, it was, and I introduced these people to my family and everything, and they were great. My family was great, but we definitely felt like we were outcasts. And when we split up, it was like, well, that didn't work, but it actually did work because we defined success in a different way. We said, it's not. If success means us being together, and if it ever gets bad, then we split up.
Yeah.
So, and then we split up, and I still look at that as like a successful relationship because it was so honest and true for the time that we experienced it. So I guess I keep thinking about my own experience in my life that, you know, if you do decide to go, this is too much of a nightmare, and this dream has become a nightmare, and you step away, you still had that experience, and it was a good experience. So keep pursuing that dream if it works. But if it becomes too much of a nightmare, it's okay to let go. It's okay to let go.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect wrap up. There's a lot of feelings and emotions and thoughts and factors of facts beyond feelings and emotions, realities that each person has to face on that. But I think that's a good perspective to start with. I'm getting chastised for not mentioning the Ramones. I have to let people know there's a lot more to punk rock music than the Ramones. They were instrumental, but the depth of the Ramones versus some of the other philosophical thoughts that I have is a little bit different. I love the Ramones. I don't know why I have to explain this every time. You can have the Beatles and the Stones. You can't. That world does exist. I mean,
no, there's two, and you got to choose one. And if you choose the wrong one, then you're not good.
Well, the right answer to that is the Stones. But if you insist on making that rule, but I don't think that you have to. And you know, life can be. It doesn't have to be or. It can be and. And I like the and. It's cool. David, that goes by Wes Welch. This is like show prep for the future. Sunk cost fallacy is called a fallacy for a reason. Homework for everybody. Go Google that, because your life is going to get better by it. And that is a stoic perspective. Mm-hmm. The cost is done. It cannot be undone. It is never going to produce. Get rid of it. Take it out back. Don't worry. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much you put into it, how much value you think it has to you. If it's a sunk cost, it's done. It is gone. Detach. Let it go. I'm not saying all ball pythons are sunk costs. I'm not saying treat your life as a sunk cost, but specific things in your life, if they're done and nothing to it, what you paid for it has nothing to do with the value of what it is today. And if that value is zero, and will always be zero or negative, get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was just trying to, the Kinks are fantastic. They're like proto-punks, man. Yeah, the Kinks are, there would be no Who without the Kinks. There you go. There's my hot take this week on music. And now I'm not even going to leave that. I'm going to let that be. I'm not even going to bring in the teaser. Joe and I know a academic doctor who did their thesis on the rock and roll scene of the 80s. That's how deep Joe and I go on this nerdiness of music. So we're rambling now. We're 3 minutes overtime, and now I'm excited to see what everybody likes. I mean, I'm seeing the Kinks, the Smiths. This is great. Okay, go do your rock and roll homework, learn about sunk costs. Joe and I will be back next Thursday. I don't know what we'll talk about. We'll probably show prep around, I don't know, 9:30 Central Time next Wednesday evening. And we'll come up with a plan. I appreciate Queensryche. I can't believe nobody has said Whitesnake in this crowd. I mean, that's where that's the obvious right answer for this show, right? No? Nobody gets it. You don't like that joke? Yeah, that's the joke, Joe. No, yeah. Joe, take us home, man.
I read a quote this morning from Jim Croce.
Oh, okay.
Stay on the music thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with it, but something to leave everybody with. The first, he said this before he went down in a plane crash.
You can't say it after, so it was before.
He sent a letter to his wife that arrived after he died.
Oh, okay.
and he said, maybe I'm getting the story wrong, but he said, the first 60 years matter, and I have 30 more to go.
That's a dark quote to end with. What are we saying? Make it count? Like what? Like, or don't write things like that. What are we doing here? Have a great Thursday. Like what?
Enjoy yourselves.
All right, guys. I teed it up for him. There it is. See y'all soon. I'll be in Davenport Sunday selling some snakes. Come hang out. Talk to me if you want to buy any. Later.